I love apple pie. They say that dogs are man's best friend and that diamonds are a girl's best friend. Well, apple pie is that BFF who hangs with everybody. Oh yes, I discovered my love for apple pie when I was working after school back when I was in high school. I worked at a bakery and I'd had apple pie before, but this was my first time having apple pie with a Dutch crumb topping. Oh my goodness, it blew my mind. This may have also been the first time I had an apple pie with like fresh apples, but whatever, it was delicious. And I was so happy because we would get a chance to take a dessert that was on its way out the door, or you can purchase something at a discounted price. And so I often found myself getting an apple pie and a chocolate fudge pie. But this is all about apple. So for this apple pie, we are using gala apples. They are not as tart as Granny Smith apples, and I just prefer gala, to be frank. Now, in general, you're supposed to use Granny Smith and then put in some sugar, so you got this sweet and tart thing going on, but I'm about that life. After all, I have a ton of allergies, and I like to make things as healthy as possible. Now, what prompted this apple pie, to be exact? Well, I had a friend who was a bit concerned that with all of my allergies, maybe I had some sort of crazy eating disorder and I was just avoiding food, but that was not the case. So I said, I'm going to go ahead and make her an apple pie that I cannot eat. I went and purchased a gluten-free crust from Whole Foods, and to sweeten this pie, we're not using sugar, we are actually using some medjool dates that were pre-soaked in water. So I'm just taking out the pits, and then I'm popping them into this trusty little blender. This little blender has been fabulous. It has landed with me to many different house sits, and it's been really easy to clean and use. I go to these houses where they have all these fancy like ninja bullet things, but I got my little $20 blender. I'm gonna add some water in here. This is about a quarter cup of water, and we have about 3 dates and then half a lemon squeezed in. And of course, we gotta go ahead and add some. The ingredients are in the blender, and we get the seeds out of the blender. You don't want to give your friends lemon seeds, especially when you're going to give them a gluten-free, healthy, vegan apple pie. And let's just say that making sure your friends don't think it's totally gross is kind of high on the list. So, seeds pulled out, cinnamon goes in. Now, I didn't measure that cinnamon, but I told you it's like a quarter teaspoon, half a teaspoon. Any of that's good. Whatever floats your boat. Pop it in the blender and blend, baby, blend. Well, you want to make sure that the dates are smooth and pretty much liquefied by the time this is done blending. You don't want chunky bits in your mixture because remember, this is replacing the sugar. So the sweetness from the dates is going to meld with the baked apples. So these apples I put in the air fryer at about 375 for 15 minutes. You want the apples to be soft. Now, because this is not a pie for myself, I decided I should really take the skins off of these. Yes, it would have been much easier had I peeled the apples beforehand, but sometimes I like doing things the hard way, or actually, I just like the way the skin peels off pretty easily. So if you don't have an apple peeler, which I did not, then you may prefer to bake your apples first, which is what I did, and then go ahead and remove the core, the stems, and of course, the skin. Now, if you like the skin on your apple, that is totally fine too. You can just make your apple pie with skins on and just remove those little stems, the seeds, and of course, as much as you can of the core. One nice thing about baking the apple is that I can preserve a lot of that apple flesh instead of losing a lot when using like a coring device. So I wanted to make sure that I used the entire bag of apples because I knew I wouldn't be able to eat and enjoy these apples later. I am sugar sensitive, and as much as I love apples, right now in my life, we are on a break. We are just holding off on someday being reunited into happy Apple Land. But I know that this pie is going to taste great. How do I know? Because it's the same recipe I used when I made my own apple pie just a few weeks before. So around the holidays, I like having a dessert with my dinner, or shall I say after dinner and for breakfast the next morning. I love it so much. And I don't do a lot of big cakes and cookies or anything like that. I'm gonna make myself one dessert. I'm gonna make it as healthy as possible, and I'm going to be okay with the fact that if I eat half a pie, that's fine, because I didn't eat, in addition to cookies, a slice of cake, and I'm not eating big pounds of sugar. I'm eating some delicious apples with some delicious dates that just happen to be cooked down and hanging out with this gluten-free crust. Now, the next time I make this pie, I'm actually going to make the crust myself. I think that what is a little sensitive for me with this pie is the gluten-free crust. It's super delicious. However, most gluten-free products do contain rice flour, and I think it's the rice flour that's getting a little unhappy with me. So these apples are lower in sugar than a lot of other apples as well. If you are sugar sensitive, then you want to think about, what kind of fruit you're using and the sugar content of that fruit. With that being said, eating a whole half a pie is not really recommended, but sometimes you gotta live a little. And hey, it's not like I'm out there doing major drugs, so I had a half a pie. So sue me, okay? Please don't sue me, because I'm gonna be working this off. All right, I'm already doing the crunches, hitting the weights. Do we really need to talk about crunches while we're making apple pie? I don't know. Maybe I should be doing crunches while making this pie. Anyway, so there are a lot of apples to peel, but it's kind of fun this way. The thing I loved growing up was having those holidays where family would come together to create these big meals, and even family that didn't like each other would come together to eat these big meals. Now, with that being said, it was even more fun when I was older, when it was the people who liked each other who had come together to make these big meals and eat these big meals together. That was just way more satisfying and gratifying. I don't know. How about your family? Do you actually cook together for holidays? Have you learned some recipes that your parent or grandparents made when you were younger? I always find it a little, I guess sad when I talk to someone who's in their 20s or 30s and they say that they're going to their parents' house for the holidays and they don't participate in the cooking process. They talk about what a wonderful cook their mom or grandma is. And I say, oh, well, have they shown you how to make it? Like, oh, they're such a good cook. No, I don't cook. And I think, well, don't you realize that tradition, that recipe, won't be around once that family member isn't around? I don't know. If it's that good, if it's that delicious, I would think you'd want to take a part in that. But to each his own. Okay, so only a few more apples to go here. Another pie that I used to really enjoy was sweet potato pie. I still enjoy it. I just don't have it very often. I think I might have a sweet potato pie once every 4 or 5 years. Apple pie, before I came up with this recipe, was really once every 4 or 5 years. For a while, I was very much into the apple pie Dutch crumb topping from Whole Foods. Now, we're not making a Dutch crumb topping for this video. If you're like, oh, what's a Dutch crumb topping? Well, that's usually going to involve sugar and butter to make that crumbly, crispy topping, and of course flour. But for this one, we are not using sugar, and we're not using butter, and we're not using real flour. So again, those dates are the replacement. I did want to make a topping for this pie. So because I purchased this Whole Foods gluten-free crust, I'm just gonna take the spare pie crust and I'm gonna flatten it out and I'm gonna put it on top of my pie once I've put all the apples in the pie. I will say that I'm not gonna show you the torture that I went through in order to flatten out that pie crust to make it as a top, because I thought it was going to be super easy. Remember, I'm not using any flour whatsoever. I had some wax paper that I was sure it would not stick to, but that pie dough was just all over the place. It was sticking to my hands. It was sticking to the paper. It was sadness. And I was sad. And I thought, this is an embarrassment. I don't need people to see me do this right now. And so I'm going to save this drama for myself. And also, I forgot to flip the camera so people could see the drama. And my hands were covered in dough. So, whatever. Trust me. It was a process. With that being said, I'm really looking forward to figuring out how I can use a different flour replacement and use it in a sense where I can roll out the dough and use that to top a pie. So here we are with the pre-made pie shell and all of my nice baked apple pieces into the shell. I did put the shell in the oven for about 20 minutes before filling it up, so that we won't have a doughy bottom. And the oven, I believe, was set at 350. And now we've gone ahead and poured our date mixture into the pie. And we're gonna place the top on it and put that in the oven. So the pie cooks for, I think it's about an hour, but I will definitely put that in the description. Because the apple is already cooked and the pie crust is already partially cooked, we're really cooking it through to get it brown, to get the apple to soften down even more, and of course to get the date mixture to meld with the apple so that we get a gooey center. And here we have it, a delicious looking apple pie. Try not to burn my hands right now as I turn this for you. Oh yes, you can see the cracks. That's because I was fighting that dough. Hope you found this video fun. And if you want to see another recipe, go ahead and click here.